We can't even say in detail how the inhabitants of the Pharaonic kingdom managed to create such huge, and at the same time, perfectly aligned buildings. The mysteries and facts that we are going to present to you today show us once again how many mysteries the past still holds. Be sure to hit the like button and ring the notification bell for more great videos. Also stick around until the end to learn one of the darkest secrets of the Egyptian pyramids that you've likely never heard before we get started.
If you love this kind of content, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. We produce amazing videos with interesting topics in the future that are sure to interest you. You can subscribe now, and hit the notification bell. Mystery Code.
The Orion Riddle. You've probably heard that the pyramids of Giza are perfectly aligned with the stars. Robert Bauval, who published the book, The Mystery of Orion in the 1990s, has a significant share in this idea. In truth, however, this representation does not correspond 100% to reality. If the pyramids were really supposed to correspond to the stars of Orion's belt, they should have been arranged slightly differently. The legend of the slave. Workers chained at the feet being whipped by their masters and being forced to drag the massive stone blocks of the pyramids across the hot desert sand with the last of their strength. If this image sounds familiar to you, then you too have become a victim of a very common misconception. Although such depictions were used by early historians to explain the rapid construction of the impressive tombs, there's now much more evidence that the great ancient Egyptian pyramids were built without the use of slave labor. On the contrary, the discovered remains of the workers' living quarters show that they even led a comparatively luxurious life. As a rule, these were not forced laborers, but rather the most respected and experienced workers in them. According to this, there were separate worker settlements near the workplaces where they could grow their own food and live with their families. Glory of the past. Although the mighty pyramids still leave us open-mouthed today, let's not forget that the majesty of the past was even more breathtaking. The pyramids were once clad in gleaming white limestone slabs, making them look like sparkling diamonds in the desert. Unfortunately, this radiant coat has been worn away over time and used to build houses in Cairo. Evidence of extraterrestrial visitors. Now we come to one of the most controversial theories about the ancient Egyptian pyramids. While most modern researchers are primarily concerned with the question of how the people of that time managed to build such impressive structures, this approach is wrong from the start. For people who prefer a much more otherworldly approach, if you follow the explanations of these parasites, then the inhabitants of the Pharaonic kingdoms were in lively exchange with extraterrestrial visitors. The extraterrestrial beings are said not only to have been worshipped as a deity at ease but also to have provided the Egyptians with futuristic technologies that they used to create the mighty pyramids. In no time at all, the imposing tombs, mysterious inscriptions, strange images, and statues appear to show extraterrestrial creatures and serve as supposed evidence of the authenticity of extraterrestriality. Do you think the ancient Egyptians actually got help from aliens when building their pyramids or such stories? Nothing more than made-up fairy tales. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments. In truth, it's easy to understand how many people simply cannot believe that the pyramids were crafted by humans. After all, there are some of the most magnificent structures to have ever been built. It can be difficult to believe that a human could come up with such an idea, let alone bring it into the real world. Thus believing that the pyramids were crafted by aliens isn't too terribly bizarre. After all, we can't prove how humans created them in the first place. Ben. Why did the Egyptians build their magnificent buildings in the shape of a pyramid? Well, maybe this design goes back to the legendary Ben, which also had the shape of a pyramid. Accordingly, this divine stone is said to bend the hill on which the primordial atoms set foot on earth for the first A look at the Pyramid Med-Ion, which was called Ben Burnett in ancient Egyptian, shows that the mythological artifact also has a direct influence on the monumental buildings. This in turn means the pointed keystone of pyramids and obelisks. Tallest structure in the world. The year is 1311 when Lincoln cathedrals were completed in England. If one follows the admittedly not always reliable traditions, then the Gothic complex also had a wooden rooftop, which finally gave the building an overall height of an impressive 160 meters. Why are we telling you this? Lincoln Cathedral was the first structure in history to dethrone the Pyramid of Cheops from being the tallest building in the world for thousands of years. No other structure held this title as long as the tomb on the Giza Plateau, which was originally almost 147 meters high. A look at the gigantic skyscrapers of modern times shows that the Empire State Building and Company were only allowed to call themselves the tallest buildings on our globe for a few decades. Since 2007, the titles belonged to the imposing Burj Khalifa in Dubai, which has a staggering total height of 828 meters. The country with the most pyramids. There's no question that the ancient Egyptian pyramids are among the most famous buildings in history. Only a few other buildings managed to achieve the worldwide fame of the mighty tombs in Egypt. But did you know that Egypt isn't even the country with the most pyramids in the world, and its neighboring country, Sudan, which was once the heart of Nubian civilization? We find even more of these fascinating buildings in detail. There are more than 220 pyramids. For comparison, in Egypt, on the other hand, we only count around 80 known pyramids. Ancient power plants. Of course, it's strictly forbidden to climb the pyramids these days, but it wasn't always like that. So in the late 19th century, nobody cared if anyone climbed the ancient monumental buildings. And the German-born Briton, Carl Wilhelm Siemens, decided at the time to venture a detour to the top of the Great Pyramid. Arriving at the top. However, the inventor and researchers said to have had a strange feeling, which manifested itself as tingling in the fingertips when he took a sip from his metal mug. An electric shock is said to have run through his limbs. These and other stories fuel the idea that the pyramids are capable of generating energy, but that's not all. Some people believe that the buildings were by no means tombstones, but ancient power plants. Secret door. In September 2020, researchers discovered a new door in the Great Pyramid. It's at the end of the narrow corridor leading from the Queen's Chamber. Unfortunately, this tunnel is far too kind for a human to enter, which is why a small robot was used to investigate. The small stone door at the end of the hallway seems to have what appeared to be two copper handles. It's unlikely that this is a ventilation shaft. After all, it does not end on the outside of the pyramid. What secret really slumbers behind the small door remain a mystery for the time being. Serapeum of Saqqara. The Serapeum of Saqqara is one of the greatest mysteries of ancient Egypt, located below the Djoser Pyramid. The sacred apes' bulls were lavishly buried here. The huge granite sarcophagus that were made are among the largest in antiquity and weigh up to 80 tons. Why the Egyptians went to the trouble of building them is still a matter of debate. After all, the building material weighing tons had to be brought in from Osman 1,000 kilometers. The burial rite that was carried out, which was in stark contrast to common practices, also poses a mystery. Underground complex. According to an old story, the Giza Plateau was once adorned by a fourth, no less impressive pyramid. Does the mysterious ramp that leads straight down into the depths have a connection with this legend? In fact, this path leads to a hidden world below the plateau that was completely unknown until 2018. So far, only a select few archaeologists have had the privilege of setting foot in this restricted. In fact, the area is almost 40 meters underground and has now been flooded. In addition, we find carefully carved niches and black basalt in a granite sarcophagus. However, since these are empty, it's reasonable to conclude that the complex was once the victim of grave robbers. The construction riddle, from ingenious ram systems to cable poles to controversial alien technologies. There are a wide variety of assumptions about how the pyramids of Giza were built in detail. Scientists are still looking for a solution to the construction puzzle to this day without having found a clear answer. So far, is already been mentioned. One hypothesis rests on the use of ramps winding around the pyramids, like a kind of spiral staircase. The problem: such an undertaking would have devoured vast amounts of wood, even though the material was scarce in Egypt at the time and was correspondingly expensive. Although the historian Herodotus spoke of machines used to build the pyramids in the 5th century, this thesis is now also considered unlikely. So far, no remains of cranes, cables, wenches, or elevators have been found that would have been suitable for moving the heavy components. Tutankhamun. Magnificent coffins, valuable jewelry, cruel curses. When Howard Carter finally managed to track down Tutankhamun, legendary tomb in 1922, he found a wide variety of things there. The inexplicable events that took place after the tomb was opened fuel rumors of an ancient pharaoh's curse to this day. It's said that the final resting places of the rulers were covered with dark spells to protect them from grave robbers. And indeed, many people had entered the tomb in the Valley of the Kings were to mysteriously die. A short time later, probably the most famous victim of the pharaoh's curse was Lord Konar. The British aristocrat who financed the excavations died a few weeks after the tomb was opened as a result of an infection. Incidentally, Tutankhamun is the only pharaoh discovered who still rests in his original tomb. Temple of Abu Simbel. As mentioned earlier, during the reign of Ramses II, the Egyptian population experienced an unprecedented heyday. How this social and cultural peak was reflected becomes clear when we take a look at the stunning temples of Abu Simbel, built in honor of Ramses II and his wife Nefertari, the stone monument bear witness to the incomparable architecture of the inhabitants of the pharaohs. However, the buildings are no longer in their original place. In order to save them from the rising water level of Lake Nasser, the temples were demolished between 1963 and 1968 as part of a mammoth project and rebuilt on a plateau. Tomb of Chenkuz I. Is it a pyramid, a rock tomb, or a mastaba? The answer is something in between. Although the final resting place of the ancient Egyptian queen Khentkhaz, the first could not be more unusual. It's often unofficially referred to as the 4th Pyramid of Giza. In fact, no other ancient Egyptian tombs should be built in such an enigmatic. It's unclear what the background of the construction is. Some researchers believe that this is an unfinished pyramid. Others consider the theory of a private tomb to be more likely. Baka Pyramid. Why was the construction of the Baka Pyramid stopped so abruptly? Which personality should have been buried here, and why was a military exclusion zone set up in the relevant area, which no civilians are allowed to enter? As you can see, the poorly studied Baka Pyramid is overshadowed by some big question marks. According to some rumors, the ancient building is now even being used as trash. And now it's your turn. What do you think of the discoveries and mysteries we brought to you today? We look forward to your comments. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe so you never miss another video. Thank you for watching. Have a good one and see you next time.
You are watching Mystical.